Hello, my name is Bruno Louagie and I'm an entrepreneur. That is, I develop free and open source software, the PDF library iText. My wife and I founded an international group of companies for iText, and together we grew the business from startup to exit. I have now written a book about the whole experience, Entreprenerd, building a multi-million-dollar business with open source software. The book consists of three parts. The first part, Failing Forward, is the origin story of iText. At the age of 12, I wrote my first lines of code on a Texas Instruments computer. 2 years later, I developed my first small business using a Tandy Radio Shack portable. I created my own database system that allowed me to produce pre-printed address labels that I sold to different organizations in my hometown. I met my wife Ingeborg in college, but I didn't know we'd start a business together many years later. The start of my career was rather bumpy. I switched jobs 3 times in 2 years' time. I started many projects on the side that didn't amount to anything. The Belgian applet, for instance, failed due to bad timing. I didn't find a market for my Perl server pages. Catalogie.com wasn't original, it was a ripoff of an existing website. While working at Ghent University, I promised that I would enhance an internet application with on-the-fly PDF creation. Little did I know that I would have to write my own PDF library to keep that promise. It was called RugPDF, where Rug refers to the abbreviation of Rijksuniversiteit Gent, the now obsolete name of Ghent University. My employer was happy with RugPDF, but I wasn't. I knew that I could do better. I rewrote the library from scratch in my own spare time. iText was born. Part 2 is dedicated to building free and open source software. In the first chapter, I introduce the concept of free software. I talk about Richard Stallman, GNU, and the Free Software Foundation. In the next chapter, I explain how open source came about, with the open source initiative started by Eric Raymond and Bruce Perens. When I released my first projects, free and open source software was far from mainstream. Large corporations were spreading FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because they saw free and open source software as a threat to their own business. I have to admit that 3 allegations were correct about iText. iText wasn't documented. I solved that by writing a book. The IP of iText wasn't clear. I solved this by doing a thorough IP review, and there was no company backing iText. I solved this by creating one. While starting a company is easy, generating revenue isn't, certainly not for something that is perceived as a free resource. In the chapter Monetizing Open Source, I explain which business models can work if you want to generate revenue with free and open source software. Part 2 ends in 2012. At that moment, iText has 7 employees, a revenue of 3.1 million euro, and an EBITDA of 1.4 million euro. In part 3, I discuss the strategies Ingeborg and I used to grow the business from startup to exit. I don't read many business books, but The Founder's Dilemmas by Noam Wasserman helped me understand that the decisions Ingeborg and I had been making qualified as control decisions. We had full ownership and full control over the companies, but we noticed that this was reducing our chances to grow. If we wanted to realize the full potential of our business, we would have to switch to making wealth decisions. We did a short M&A project to find out what we needed to make our company investor ready. This resulted in a business plan with a clear strategy for iText. We reorganized our companies and we installed a board of directors. Our efforts paid off. In 2014, we won the Belgian edition of Deloitte's Technology Fast 50. That was one of the many business awards that we would win. In 2014, we also started a second M&A project, codenamed Wall Street. This resulted in a partial exit in December 2015. We sold 3/4 of our shares to a South Korean vendor of productivity software. I signed a 3-year commitment after the exit. In 3 chapters, I explain how we searched for synergies in the first year, how we had to change our strategy in the second year, and how the management changed in the third year. This eventually caused a dispute. I went to court against the majority shareholder and I sold the remainder of my shares in March 2020. With Entreprenerd, I wanted to write a book that I wish I could have read at the start of my career. If you're a technical founder, you want to know what to expect when starting a company to generate the revenue necessary to further develop your technology. You want to get acquainted with the terminology that is needed to understand customers, salespeople, accountants, investors, and lawyers. You want to learn from someone who shows you what he did and how he did it, rather than from someone merely telling you what to do. That's why I wrote Entrepreneur. Check out entrepreneur.loagi.com for more information. Thank you.